So my talk is focused on the frame people can think like this and other similar frames and their place in NSM semantics, in explications and also in scripts. Uh, and the title of the talk raises the question about the place and the status of such frames in NSM semantics. But of course, we use such frames, I think, in NSM explications and scripts a lot, although we haven't discussed them much in the past. But it seems to me that the underlying question here is about the place of such phrases in human thinking, underlying language. So it's not an accident that they appear a lot in NSM explications, because I think they play a great role in human communication. So, and I want to start with two very obvious examples, which actually are not on the handout. The words, English words, genocide and invasion. Well, I think that these words, for many of us, these words are on our minds these days very often. So what does the word genocide mean? The Oxford English Dictionary offers the following definition. I'll read. Genocide, the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. Well, I think this may be okay as far as it goes, but clearly it's not sufficient, because it does not indicate that the word conveys also a certain way of thinking about such actions. It shows what the speaker, and probably not only the speaker, think about it. So looking at the word genocide from an NSM perspective, I would like to propose something like the following explication, and this is only very approximate. It can be like this. Some people want to kill very many people of one kind. Because of this, they kill very many people of this kind. We think about it like this. It is very, very bad. Well, if you look at if you pay attention to the last component of this proposed explication, you immediately have the question, we think like this? Is this the optimal phrasing? Or should it be I think like this? Or should be people think like this? Many people think like this, and so on. And why? And how do we choose? And so on. Well, I think that at the moment, at least, I would favor in this particular case the phrasing we. We think about it like this. This is very, very bad. But the question is open to discussion. What I think is not open to discussion is that some such component should be included in the explication. And a similar question arises with respect to the other word which I mentioned, invasion. Collins Colville, in English Language Dictionary, defines this word as follows. An invasion is the action of an army entering a country by force. Again, from a purely factual point of view, this may be okay. But what about the attitude which is embedded in this word? As most of us know, on the 26th of February this year, the Russian media banned the use of this word and mandated instead the use of the frame a special military operation. And no doubt one reason for this ban on the word invasion was the desire on the part of the authorities to cover up the facts, not to acknowledge the fact that an army entered a country by force. But surely this is not the only reason. The other reason, I think, is the negative attitude embedded in the word invasion itself. So for a semanticist, the question is, what is the best way of articulating, formulating this attitude embedded in the word invasion? Should it be the same as in the word genocide? We think like this is very, very bad, or should it be different? And if so, how and why? I haven't studied these two words in depth, but my impression is that the attitude is rather different in both cases, in each case. So for invasion, I would propose the following phrasing. People can think like this. This is very bad. Not we, but people. Not think, but can think. Not very, very bad, but very bad. So these are my two introductory examples, which have to do with ways of thinking, which involve evaluation. But semantic components referring to how people think or can think about something are contained in words of many different kinds, and they take many different forms. So certainly, we often find them in the meaning of words referring to beliefs and emotions and evaluation. But we also find them in the meaning of words which have to do with the physical world and with nature. For example, with words for physical properties and words for kinds of animals and plants, and no doubt also in landscape terms, although I haven't really looked at it. This means that when we look at words from an NSM perspective, we often find in their meaning components framed with phrases such as these. People can think about it like this, or people can think like this. Many people think about it like this, or many people think like this. These people think about it like this, or these people think like this. Or some people think about it like this, or some people think like this. We can think about it like this. We think about it like this. We think like this. I think like this, and so on. So in this talk, I want to illustrate the use of such components in a number of NSM explications. To begin with, I want to look at the NSM explication of the word long, which Cliff and I have been grappling with off and on for many years. Then I want to move to so-called color words using two examples, the English word blue and the Walbury word kunjuru kunjuru, both of which Cliff and I included in our book Words and Meanings, 2014. Then I want to look at some sections of Cliff's explications of the words animals and kangaroos. And then I want to move to some face-related words. And in this part of the talk, I want to start with the word miracles. Then I want to quickly compare the meaning of the English word Christ with the meaning of the Russian word Christos and the Polish word Christe, which is evocative. And then I want to present the latest version of my explication of the English word the Eucharist and its equivalents in other European languages, a concept which is crucial to Christianity. Well, if there is time, I would also like to show you my explication of a sign which is nonverbal, and a nonverbal sign, because I think that these frames are also very important in the meaning of signs other than words and phrases. And as an example, I'd like to show you, if there is time, the meaning of my explication of the green lights as they appear in a sequence of traffic lights. And to conclude, I'd like to invite a discussion about the status and the range of such frames, like people can think like this in NSM semantics, and also about what the ubiquity of these frames tells us about people and how people think and how they construe and interpret the world. So I'm moving now to the first explication, and you really need to look at the handout. Let me just read the explication of long, which is on the handout, which is not exactly the same as Cliff's explication shown yesterday, but the differences are not really relevant for my purposes, for the purposes today. Long. When people see something like this, they can think about it like this. There are many places here. Two of them are not like any others, because one of them is very far from the other. These two places are on two sides of this thing. One of them is on one side, the other is on the other side. You can see the first line underlined. When people see something like this, they can think about it like this. This is the introductory frame. The second example, blue and kunjuru kunjuru. And these two examples come from words and meanings. So blue, first I will read it as it is on the handout and as it is in the book. Although I would now slightly update it. So when people think about the color of X, they can think like this. The color of the sky can be like this at many times during the day. It can be like this when people can see the sun. It can be like this when people can't see the sun. The color of the sea can be like this. Well, we don't like X's anymore, so I would prefer not to have X here, but this. And it seems to me the word C, S-E-A, should, no, S-double-E, should appear in the first line. So I would like to correct the first line as follows. Adjust the first line. When people see this, they can think like this, which is in line with the explication for long. And there is a shorter explication here for the Warburg word kunjuru. Kunjuru, where kunjuru means smoke, literally. So when people see this, they can think about it like this. When people see kunjuru somewhere, they can see something like this. When people can see smoke somewhere, they can see something like this. Again, the main point here is that it must start, it seems, with this line, when people see this. So this is a typo. They can think about it like this. Now I'm moving to the explications, or to Cliff's explications of animals and kangaroos, and I only copied the last section of the explications, which the last section which has to do with how people think about them. So animals, people can think about creatures of this kind, of these kinds, like this. They can do many things. They can feel many things. At the same time, people can think about them like this. They can't know many things like people know many things. They can't say something with words like people can say something with words. They can't think like people can think. They can't think like this about something. It will be good if I do this. It will be bad if I do this. Anyway, types of thoughts which are specific to people and which we believe are not available to animals, or to so-called lower animals. But you have those two lines which seem necessary. People, well, which Cliff put into his explication. People can think about creatures of these kinds like this, and at the same time, they can think about them like this. And similarly, for kangaroos, well, maybe I will not read the whole section about kangaroos, but you can see the last two lines. When people in many countries think about these animals, they often think about Australia at the same time. Very interesting phrase. It's a different phrase, a different type of phrase, but frame, but it also has to do with how people think, or maybe can think or can think. They often think about Australia at the same time. Okay, so now I'm moving to the first concept, which is related to faith, miracles. As used, as the word is used in sentences like, I don't believe in miracles, or I was praying for a miracle. The word miracle can also be used by extension in other ways, but I hope you can understand that I'm really trying to zero in here on the basic sort of literal meaning. So, what is a miracle? Something of one kind. Things like this happen very seldom. People can't know why they happen. They happen when God wants them to happen. Many people think like this. We know that things like this cannot happen. Other people think like this. When God wants something to happen, it can happen. When something of this kind happens somewhere, people in this place can think about it like this. Something very, very good happened here now. We don't know how it happened. God knows it. At the same time, they can think like this. We know that it happened because we saw it. Sometimes when something like this happens in a place, many people in this place can see it. Sometimes not many. sometimes one. So you can see we have here 5 underlined lines with the frame which we are interested in. Many people think like this, other people think like this, and then this sort of located thinking in particular people in a particular place. When something like this, like when something of this kind happens somewhere, people in this place can think about it like this. And at the same time, they can think like this. So I'm trying here to capture the perspective of the person who uses the word miracle seriously, not metaphorically, as in the sentence, I was praying for a miracle. But at the same time, this person is aware that there are people who say that such things cannot happen. The next point, sorry, I should be looking at my words. The English word Christ, the Russian word Christos, and the Polish word Christe, they all refer to Christ. But I think they all include a different attitude. And this is reflected in how the word is actually used by people. I think the range of use of Christ in English and Christos in Russian is really remarkably different. So, what is the attitude in Christ? I discussed this in my talk at the NSM workshop in 2020. It was called NSM and Contested Meaning, the Taste of Christ and some other ones. So anyway, well, the English word Christ refers to someone called Jesus, whom people also know perhaps more commonly as Jesus. Jesus. We think about him like this. He is the Son of God. He is above us. He is with us. When we think like this, we feel something very good, as we can feel when we think about God. So you have a kind of combination here of something like awe and reverence, and it's a sort of somewhat formal word, and the idea that he's someone above us as well as with us, and so on. So this is reflected in a somewhat limited range of use of these words. It's many people, many Christians use this word mainly in church, not actually in personal, in conversation or in personal prayer. So, and at Easter, Russians say Christos Воскресе, Christ is risen, very widely. Everybody says, I mean, lots of people, even non-Christians, say Christos Воскресе, because the word Christos is a very colloquial, everyday word in Russian. So some of those components, attitudinal components, which are in the meaning of the English Christ, are missing. And according to what I've proposed here, one component which is missing is this idea that he's someone above us. It's missing here. And maybe also the kind of feeling which is expressed with this Russian word, well, it's also different. And then I also included this Polish vocative Christe, which seems to me very interesting, because the nominative Christus in Polish, well, maybe it's similar to the English word Christ. But the vocative is special. And this is a kind of, it's not the normal Polish vocative, normal in a morphological sense. It's a loan from Latin. It's a very special Latin form of vocative, Latin vocative, which is part of, has been part of Polish religious language for centuries. So, okay, let me just read to you the explication. And I didn't know how to even show that this is addressed to Jesus, because I would have to use the vocative of the word Jesus in Polish, which has its own semantics. So I left it without anything. Not very satisfactory, but I just didn't know how to do it. Anyway, I want to say something to you. It's a vocative. I think about you like this. You are the Son of God. You are above us. You are with us. When I think like this, I feel something very, very good. So speaking roughly, it's a loving word. It's a kind of loving, this vocative. So it's not like Christ and not like Christos. The only other word like this which I can think of is the Polish vocative Jesu, which is the Latin vocative of the word for Jesus, which also expresses this kind of loving attitude. Okay, let me move on, because I'd like to read to you the main, the longest explication I have, and the one that has gone through a great many versions. I see Debbie Hill here. She helped me yesterday with making some good changes, I think, in yesterday's version of this explication, and other people have helped too. So anyway, I hope you can give me the time to read the current version, which is on the latest version of your handout. And you will see the role that thinking plays here, people's thinking in various ways. So the introductory block. It happens, what's Eucharist? It happens because people of one kind, Christians, want it to happen. No, that's right. So it's something that happens because people of one kind, called Christians, want it to happen. Christians think about Jesus. They want to live as he said. They can know what he said. They know what happened on the night before Jesus died. During the Eucharist, they think about it. They can think about it like this. So the next three blocks are framed by how Christians think, no, how Christians can think about what happened on the last night before Jesus died. And of these three blocks, as you'll see, the first two, no, the first one doesn't have any thinking, but I will read it nonetheless. On that night, Jesus was with the 12 people called the apostles. It was a time of the year called Passover. They were eating lamb, they were eating bread, they were drinking wine, as Israelites did at that time of the year. When they were eating, Jesus took some bread into his hands. He broke it, gave some of it to the apostles, then said to them, "Take it, all of you, eat of it. This is my body. It will be given for you." He wanted to say something like this with these words. I want to do something very good for you, for all people. I want all people to live with God. I will die because of it. People will kill me. Very bad things will happen to my body. And then the second block of the indented story, yeah. When they were not eating any longer, Jesus took a cup with wine into his hands. He gave it to the apostles. Then he said to them, "Drink of it, all of you. This is my blood. It will be shed for you." At the same time, he said something like this: people don't live with God. This is very bad for them. I want all people to live with God. I will die because of it. People will kill me. My blood will be shed. People will see it. And now the last part of the indented story. After this, Jesus said something like this to the apostles. Do this when I'm not with you on earth anymore like before. The last time the apostles saw Jesus on earth, he said to them, I will be with you always. They could know that when he said you, he was thinking about many, many people, because he said, I will be with you always when there are people on earth. When the apostles thought about it later, they could think like this. We know now how Jesus can be with people on earth always. We know now why he said, do this when I'm not on earth anymore like before. So as you can see, I'm here attributing a certain interpretation to the apostles. Well, I don't know how they thought, but I think that's the most plausible interpretation on the basis of what we know from the New Testament. And then the last block, which is outdated, about what is happening, how Christians understand what's happening at the Eucharist, how Christians understand it now. So when the Eucharist is happening somewhere, there can be many people in that place. Someone there does some things like Jesus did on that night, says some things as he said. The other people there can think about it like this. People of one kind can do these things, say these things. Other people cannot. Jesus wanted it to be like this. This someone is someone of this kind. At the same time, they can think like this, the people there on the spot. Something is happening here as it happened on the night before Jesus died. Jesus is here. We can't see him. Something like bread is here. We can see it. Jesus says to us all now, as he said to the apostles, take, eat, this is my body. They can think, Jesus died, Jesus lives. Because of this, we can live. They can think, Jesus said, I will be with you always. He is here now. Well, as you can see, I've compromised on the purity of NSM in various ways, as we have to do often when we use minimal English for various reasons in different contexts. Well, here I used some non-minimal English, especially when I was trying to stay very close to Jesus's authentic words. This is my body, it will be given for you. That's not pure NSM, but it's very close to it. And then I try to explain what Christians can think he meant using more sort of pure NSM and so on. Well, you can see the proliferation of those phrases referring really not so much to people thinking as to how they can think. And I think this framing, this phrase, they can think, it's a very useful phrase because on the one hand, it shows you that I'm not claiming that that's how they thought or that's how they think because I don't know. At the same time, so it's subjective, if you like. But at the same time, saying that they can think like this, well, suggests that there may be some kind of basis for this. They can think like this. And there are reasons why. Okay, so I don't think I will have the time for green light because I would like to leave time for discussion. And I will not have the time for the last example here and not for mana and so on. But I'd like to make at least one comment on those, on the last example, which is given here under 9, textual interpretation. It refers to a fragment from St. Paul's letter, a fragment from St. Paul's letter to the to Romans, where he talks about the law written on human hearts. And I wanted to include this here because the frames referring to how people think or how people can think appear here in 2 new forms. I don't think we saw these forms before. First of all, there's the question of textual interpretation. There are many very important texts, well, important in the sense that millions of people are interested in them and they want to know what the speaker or writer thought. So the letter, St. Paul's letters are certainly in that category. Lots of people want to know what he meant when he said, for example, when he was talking, for example, about the law written on human hearts. So I quoted what he said, and then I used this frame here. When we think about it, we can think about it like this to indicate that this is our interpretation. And who are we, the interpreters? And I was talking to Cliff about it, and Cliff helped with formulating this line. When we think about it, we can think about it like this. You have to reflect on it. But I think Cliff was somewhat skeptical about we, whether it should be we. And I changed it at that time to people. But now it seems to me again that we really does belong here. Because, well, who are those we? Well, this is a possible interpretation and not my own personal interpretation, but an interpretation shared by many people. But at the same time, there are other possible interpretations. So anyway, so this is one frame, one type of the frame that I wanted to draw your attention to. When we think about it, we can think about it like this. And the other one, which it's a frame which I've used actually a lot in various writing on Christian semantics. All people can think like this, I. So in this case, when Paul wrote these words, he wanted to say something like this. All people can think like this. Something in me says, don't do bad things, do good things, and so on. We haven't seen this before, but I think that this is a frame which actually is very important for our understanding of some aspects of the world and our life, that all people can think like this, I, and then you go into the I mode and so on. Anyway, I'm running out of time. So thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to any comments from you.